attack, fast fatal heart impact, past painful scars. In fact, I blast tasteful bars and packs. I back up my actions, fact don't ask, grab reactions, jacked attack with every word, then act with class as they hear me snap. I got nothing to lose, cause I fought and felt the bruise. Now I'm not the one confused, call the shots and they produce. I ain't lost, I'm finally loose, pick a new silver excuse. I need the views to boost me to a new abuse of being used. Everybody wants a piece now, y'all can rest in peace now. You're dead to me, so peace out. Remember, you're discreet out. Get ready for defeat now.
Alrighty. Hello everybody. This is Kirusho here. Now, as you can tell by this video being posted, this is going to be my My Hero Academia and Marvel crossover series. What if Deku was the Void? Now, for those of you who are confused or do not know who the Void is, he's basically the counterpart to the Sentry. Both of them were created at the same time, in the same instance. Whenever a man broke into a research facility and expected to steal a drug to get high, he accidentally injected himself with a version of the super soldier serum. And whenever he basically manifested his powers, he turned into the Void. However, he also created a counterpart into his mind, called the Sentry. Now, these two beings, both of them on their own, are extremely powerful. And their feats of strength, and things that they have done before, it's insane. So, let us begin with Izuku Midoriya. In this timeline, things are a bit different. You do have hero teams like the Avengers, the Inhumans, the X-Men, and quite a lot of others. Sometimes heroes leave certain teams and go to join new ones. It's not really that new or different. Honestly, it should be expected at this point. And over the last couple centuries, there was a bit of a problem. Somewhere around the time quirks started popping up, you did also have the mutants and the Inhumans. They were seen differently. People with quirks, they were ridiculed and somewhat discriminated against, along with the Inhumans and the mutants. However, people were more scared of the Inhumans than the mutants, because of exactly how much stronger their abilities were. It was... yikes. It was just bad. However, as time passed and progressed, you had Hero Society form, and eventually get to where it is today, where you do have heroes like All Might and every other one from My Hero Academia. They've had to really try and catch up. People with quirks, if they want to be strong, they have to immediately start working on their quirk, and push themselves to harder extents, just to try and keep up. Along with that, you do have the fact that some people, with the progression of time, there begin to be hybrids and crossbreeding of the quirks, the Inhumans, and mutants. So, it became a bit more common for someone to be two of one thing, a mutant or an Inhuman, or a person with a quirk and a mutant. It doesn't really matter, but it just became part of the way society was. Sometimes your quirk had excess mutant abilities or Inhuman traits to it, meaning that they're a lot more versatile and useful, along with amped up in power. Now, that basically means that everyone with a quirk, that boosts them a lot, and makes them stronger already. Now, we do have Inko. She takes Midoriya to the quirk doctor, and they find out that he is quirkless. and it kinda does surprise her. The fact being that she does have her quirk, telekinesis. She doesn't really have any problems with it. She can lift heavy objects, lift cars, boulders, you name it. And it's quite simply just strange. And then you do have Hisashi's fire manipulation quirk. How is it possible that their son is quirkless? Hisashi can quite literally turn into the Human Torch. Which, surprise surprise, someone already trademarked that name. Anyways, now. Midoriya, he is kinda surprised to hear about this. He doesn't drop his action figure though. More or less, he just asks about the possibility of him possibly being a mutant, or possibly an inhuman. Inko actually trying to get information about that. And the doctor simply begins to state, if Midoriya is an inhuman, then that means that he carries a very specific genome. And if he's a mutant, well, they wouldn't really be able to test that. Mutant abilities are harder to come by, and actually scan for. The gene is essentially dormant until it awakens around the later stages of puberty, sometimes early stages. Hell, we've even had cases of people manifesting them roughly closer to the age of 10. More commonly, it's a very, very hard thing to study, especially since well, instances in our past. Studying mutations and mutants isn't really somewhat allowed anymore. Oh, well, it's understandable at least. But is there any way to test for the inhuman gene? No. That one's actually a bit more of a mystery. The Inhumans, as soon as any one of them pops up, they are either protected or taken away by other Inhumans. In fact, they're somewhat a peculiar case. You do have the hero like Black Bolts. The man, with quite simply his voice, could shatter continents. But he stays quiet. You do have Medusa and others like her. In fact, they even do have that giant inhuman animal. That one's more peculiar. Ah, I see. Now, eventually Midoriya does go back to his school the next day. Other kids who are, well, have quirks, they are showing them off. And you do have Bakugo. He was specifically told by his mom to be careful with his quirk. Since the explosions he's blasting off, instead of them being like firecrackers, they're actual explosions. Somewhat like, his palms basically look like whenever his gloves do whenever they burn up. He's basically doing that, along with the fact that there is actually smoke emanating off of his hands. And, well, you have him tested outside. He goes outside and he's letting off explosions. Very, very large ones. However, you can tell that he's not strong enough to simply withstand them. Whenever he throws an explosion up in the air, yeah, it basically just slams his hand down into his face. It's like if you were to hold out your arm and fire a gun. If the gun has too much recoil, your arm will bend and you'll bonk yourself in the face with it. Now, Midoriya, yeah. Whenever people find out that he is quirkless, it's not really that much of a big deal. Many people actually crowding around him and trying to see if they know if he's going to be a mutant or not. Midoriya, actually a little bit popular. And surprise, surprise. This is whenever he does actually try and explain it, from what he knows. And he doesn't explain it very well. Basically explain that apparently they'll manifest whenever he's older. Now, With that being said, time does pass, and heroes rise and heroes fall. It's actually quite interesting, especially because when Midoriya gets a bit older, he does begin to learn about American superheroes. You do have Iron Man, and you also do have Captain America. Then you do have Spider-Man. He really does seem to be interesting. However, you also do have villains, like Carnage, Venom, the Red Skull, and more dangerous people. Now, Midoriya, well, let's just say that he is at the age of 10 years old, and he has yet to show off any mutant traits, or inhuman. Now, he is sitting in class today, and he's trying to think about his abilities. What would they be, and how would they work? He probably has something like fire, right? So he'd have to be very careful. Or possibly telekinesis. Or, wait, I could either have that or pyro, I think it's called. I can set anything on fire if I look at it or try and lift it. That actually would be very dangerous. Huh. This is getting a bit annoying. Now, with that being said, Midoriya does eventually head home. And it's all beginning to get a bit hard to understand. Midoriya, he doesn't manifest any abilities. Is he really just a regular human? That can't be right. Now, as he heads home, you do have something going on in America. While Midoriya does sleep at night, you do have roughly, well, let's say it's 5 a.m. in Japan. Meanwhile, it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon in America. You do have the man known as the Sentry, before he manifested his powers. He is currently breaking into a lab, and he's trying to get high. Yeah, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is actually how the Sentry got his powers. Whenever he does head in, he begins to look for something, and eventually he does find the serum. He does know that it's going to be risky, but it would probably be worth it. He doesn't think it through properly, and he injects himself with it. However, instead of him turning into the Void for the first time, he turns into the Sentry, the lab exploding, and him being found a couple hours later. He's found in the middle of the city, with a cape and an S painted on his chest. Basically, he showed off great power and, well, strength and abilities. Many people reported the large explosion looking as if it just turned the night to day. Meanwhile, you do have Midoriya. He currently is going through a bit of a nightmare. And there are his abilities. They've manifested. Now, for those of you confused, what I'm doing here is making Midoriya a mutant. Just like how Cyclops pulls his optic beams out of his eyes from another dimension, Midoriya pulls his power from another dimension. Now, Midoriya pulls them from the dimension the Void inhabits. However, the Void was not created until just now. And it's currently inhabiting the same dimension Midoriya is trying to draw his power from. Without it, there can be no mutant ability. Now, That basically means you're connected to an empty dimension, which just now has the power he needs. Midoriya waking up in a cold sweat and simply showing off strange things. His room, yeah. There are tons of scratches and things covering the entire area, along with the fact that Inko, she just ran in and saw Midoriya, who is lying on his bed and looking to see the damage. There are cuts, scrapes, and other things all around the room, along with the fact that whenever she ran in, she thought that she saw shadows moving. And it simply was weird. Now, a couple hours later, you do have her calling Midoriya out for school that day, and taking him to see exactly what is going on. The doctors wanting to know a bit more about his strange ability, and trying to get Midoriya to test it. Him showing it off. This is where Midoriya shows off the ability of shadows. And it's quite strange. Midoriya, he's a very special case. Two people with quirks, they gave birth and basically have a son that is a mutant. That means that the quirk gene probably skipped a generation, or it was simply piggybacking off of a mutant ability. Now, Midoriya. He is surprised to learn that he has an ability to do with shadows. And it's quite strange. Midoriya, they try and perform tests and get to know what he does. However, he can't really control it. Whenever they do ask him to simply manifest these things, he holds out his hand and tries to use his power. However, you do have tendrils coming out of them. Coming out of his hand, his fingertips, and roughly his arm. All of them extending. And showing off this power. Now, with that being said, you do have the Xavier School, or Institute. Midoriya, he is a mutant. And there has been a phone call. Now, whenever Midoriya does leave the hospital and head home, he does actually go to school the next day, and begin to talk with a few of other kids. All of them learning that Midoriya is a mutant. Other kids are excited and really happy about that. However, there is also what's going on outside. This being whenever a blackbird lands. And a lot of kids are watching it and seeing what is going on. Now, Midoriya, he simply just watches as Professor Xavier and a few other mutants. They're all with him. And they begin to walk throughout the area and walk into the school. Now, after that, over the loudspeaker, you do have the principal calling for Izuku Midoriya. Him getting out of his seat and simply going to the principal's office. Him meeting Charles Xavier. And them trying to get an understanding of his ability. They heard that he was a mutant. And it's quite odd. It's been a very long time since they've actually had another mutant pop up. Midoriya, he's not one of these special cases after the House of M event, where only 5 mutants were born. That event has yet to happen. Midoriya, he was told that there was an instance in America, and a power that might be the opposite of his manifested. He's not too sure about it. He doesn't know what they're talking about. And it's quite a coincidence. One day that ability was there. Then there's Midoriya, who has the exact opposite ability. They want to know a bit more about it. Now, Midoriya begins to try and explain himself. Charles Xavier, he does believe the young boy. He's a mutant, a very special case. And they do try and talk to the boy about getting him signed into and put into a X-Men school for mutants. They already have a location in Japan. Actually, it's in the city. For young mutants. Midoriya, he's going to go to the school and try and get a better grasp of his powers and abilities. Then, once he does spend some time there and get a good grasp on them, he can come back to this school or stay there. It's quite simply that they want to take countermeasures. And if they can help him out, yeah. They can protect and prevent quite a lot of people from getting hurt from his abilities. Midoriya, yeah. He does actually accept their offer. And Midoriya is told that he simply needs to come to this location. And that they can actually take him on a bit of a tour right now, if they simply can take him. The principal, yeah. He's informing them that they have to do things a certain way. Call his mother, get her here, and then they can meet you either the next day or tomorrow. The boy cannot do this right now. Especially not going off with them. They're complete and total strangers, even if they are heroes. Now, after Inko is called and informed about this, yeah, she's quite surprised. Her using telekinesis and flying her way to the school. And surprised to see a giant plane basically sitting out there. Going in and learning about what's going on. Now, after a bit of convincing by Charles, yeah. Midoriya and Inko do leave on the Blackbird. Quite a lot of people watching Midoriya walk with the X-Men. Until they get on the plane and head over to the school. And they go on a bit of a tour. Learning more about the facility and exactly how things work here. Midoriya, he is one of many kids that they have housed at the facility. And with time, he'll learn to control himself properly. Asking if he's had any mishaps with his power. Midoriya trying to explain it. Sometimes at night, it doesn't feel like it's able to be controlled. And whenever he does try and use it sometimes, or for a very long time, he doesn't feel right. He feels like he's turning into something. He's not too sure if he has a he's not a... bleh. He has a mutation, or simply is just a mutant. This being where Charles, he doesn't really know. They'd have to talk to Beast about that. Beast is their leading doctor for the X-Men. And he himself has studied mutants. Now, with that being said, I do believe that I can leave this off of here. And I do hope you guys enjoyed. And have an amazing day. Catch you guys in the next part.